in everything. Um, and what I like to talk about is a subject um, that I believe is symbolized
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of different things, such as like the pyramid, uh, the Star of David, um, religious symbols, obviously, um, and how that can be broken down, those symbols, into one thing, and that is what it is to be a human being. And I know you grew up in Russia, right?
Yep.
Okay. Here in America, we're raised in the land of the free, and we're told we have free will. And as we grow up and as we learn in life, um, we're told right from wrong. We're given a Bible and we're taught manners, things of that nature. And every time we lose control or throw a tantrum of sorts, we get, corporal punishment. We get spanked, whatever, or we get our parents telling us, control yourself. And I remember as a kid trying to do that, holding my breath and trying to control my emotions. Okay. But the one thing I never had in this country was a class that actually taught me as a human being how I work. So that's an interesting question I pose to you. Have you ever had a class that actually taught you how you work?
You mean the professional education from the day one?
Not just professional, but in any respect. Has anybody ever taught you, especially like you would think you would learn something like this in an educational system, right? We're taught manners, and when we go through school, you have teachers that break up fights or whatever. But have you ever had a class that actually taught you how you work as a human being?
You mean the meaning of life and stuff like this? And
Yeah,
I mean the what is the reason you are here? What you're supposed to
well,
do? Right? How you develop? This stuff, right?
correct. That's what most people will say. Or when I ask this question of people, they'll say, well, they'll describe the type of person that they are. Okay, well, I'm a kind of guy that, works hard and, I follow the rules, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm asking is, have you ever had a class that specifically broke down how you as a human being actually work? And most people can't give me a quick or a fast answer. They have to think about it. Okay. Um,
Well, my
but
teacher is life, so it's like I mean, the majority of people I know didn't have any classes of, so you have to find out by yourself. Maybe that's
correct,
my answer.
correct. That's yes, and it's a good answer. It's one that people will give you. That life is your own journey, and each one of us have our own journey in life to experience, and that's true. We're all going to experience life one way or another, but we do it the same way. And so I'll take the liberty to say what I believe, and I believe that we work through four things trapped in this human body called a beast or an animal, right? We work through thought and feelings as we sit here. We have thoughts and we have feelings, and we work through memories and emotion. Okay, I could I could say something to you that can spark a thought that brings up a memory that in turn brings up emotion into our conscious world is feeling. Would you agree to that?
Well, I'd like to add that we also have that information at around 2007, maybe 2008, when I started all this awakening and stuff. So the information is that each and every one of us like picks his own life before he is like born. So I mean, You pick the life of your like relative,
Hmm.
and so you pick the body of the possible kid, and so you have to like measure all the risks and stuff like this. So you can, but right now we have a huge line of relatives that can just be born because we have less kids than we used to have. So that's why you just pick the body that they give you. You cannot pick it
Yeah.
anymore. So it's like they give you the body and you just enter it. But the
And
lessons
see,
are assigned to each and every person. They're different. That's why we have different destinies. And in fact, what we believe is that the destiny itself is not like a word. It's the name of somebody who is assigning you the lessons that you have to pass. And through your life, you have so-called, we call it rock. Rock is like, like a band and stuff like music. So we call it rock.
okay.
Rock. And this rock is your destiny that you have to like, develop through this rock. You have to like, carry this rock on your back
Mhm.
all the way uphill. And
Burden.
the higher you climb, the better lessons you get. So it's like the better for your development, of course. Not for it's like it's easy or something. It's not easy. The worst lessons are in the top. So and you can fall off this rock very easy. So this is like
Well,
allegoric.
so so we talk about spiritualism, right? So how do I get this across? Um, who I am is a retired highway patrolman. I investigated automobile accidents, and in that capacity, I had to investigate um, a lot of horrible things. Okay, and I was in the military and for 4 years, and then I went into becoming a highway patrolman. And as a highway patrolman, they trained me to deal with my emotions in order to do this job. Um, so training is the same thing as repetition. The more you do something, the better you become at it. Um, when you do a job like this where you see horrible things and then you have to investigate every aspect, every little thing about it, it keeps you rather busy, and it never stops. It just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming, and pretty soon your whole life passes by you. At the end of my career, I sustained a really bad back injury, and because of that back injury, I was in constant pain. And at the same time, I began suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder syndromes and emotion. At that time, or before that time where I was injured, I used to think I was a master of emotion. You wouldn't be able to come up to me as this highway patrolman and the job that I did and try to talk to me about emotion, because I was a master of it. My emotion never got the better of me. Okay, until the end of my career. And what I realized at the end of my career was that I wasn't a master of emotion. I had spent a lifetime, a career of denying myself emotion. Okay. And when emotion finally did get inside my armor, I had no idea how to deal with it. It was more powerful than it should be because I had denied myself emotion this whole time. And when it finally got to me, I had no clue how to deal with it. None. And mm, it's a horrible disease to have, post-traumatic stress disorder. So I had to go through, seeing some doctors. I went through one doctor who deals with military members that for post-traumatic stress disorder, and she gave me the newest, treatment that they give, etc. And part of that was kind of trying to put you into a light form of hypnosis, if you will. And they explained how the brain works, the left side, the right side, and what happens when you have memories and all these memories, that how they're triggered. In essence, though, what she was actually describing to me was how we work as human beings. In any event, mm, I had to ask myself, how does a highly professional or a highly trained professional like me, after 30 years of doing this, how did things go so wrong for me? Okay. And so I started searching, I started looking, my marriage fell apart. all sorts of things. But so I went looking to for an answer, and I found different things along the way. Christianity has never been something that I truly believed in. I understand the story, etc. And but there's a lot of things in the religion that has been changed by man, and I truly believe that. But the story that I found um, was in Buddhism. Okay, and Buddhism is really not a religion; it's an understanding of what a man is, and that's what Buddha did. He investigated himself. In his day, they were still fighting over religion. You know, my God is better than your God, my way is better than your way, etc. So he decided he was going to do it from a man's point of view and take God out of it. And when you go through the basic Buddhist story, not the religion as it's trying to be taught or picking up a book and trying to read what some other person is telling you about, but when you just take a look at the simple Buddhist story, what you're going to find is a training. And that training lies within the meditation and prayer. And when you understand that this is a man that faced his fears and faced himself, um, it allowed him to basically gain control over his emotion, specifically his subconscious emotional reaction, that trigger that takes place in all humans. Um, if I knew you well enough to say, Philip, do you remember this? You know, I'm sure. In fact, I saw you in a video where you're addressing some people that you're having some conflict with, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And this is what sparked this conversation with me to you. Okay, because it's about emotion, how people can push your buttons. Okay,
Yeah.
and then how those thoughts of what's happening to you at that given moment go into the memory, and it brings up this emotion. And as that emotion comes up, that reaction, that's what gets us in trouble. And it's this reaction that I'm talking about in human beings, because there are powerful people that truly understand what this reaction is and how this works and how you can train it, how you can control yourself. Okay. And this is what is not taught to us. This is the same story as Solomon in God's temple. Okay, God's temple. He uses a magical ring, and that ring, I will say, stands for the understanding of how we work through thought, memory, feelings, and emotion. Okay, and he says he uses this magical ring to chase out evil demons. And I will suggest to you that what he's talking about are bad memories and bad emotions, painful emotions, how to chase those things out of God's temple. And God's temple, in my mind, is us. We are the temple. Okay. You know, where does evil in this world come from? It comes from within man. Why? Because man does not know how to control himself, pretty much, you know. So it's the same story as Solomon. He uses that same ring then to uh, call upon good spirits to rebuild the temple. Okay. That story, in essence, what he's doing there is the same thing that takes place in the Buddhist story. He's in meditation. The pyramid, the all seeing eye, stands for the same thing, meditation. It's the third eye. That's part of meditating, understanding how to get to this calm subconscious training ground. It takes, when I started, it it took me 30, 40 minutes sometimes to be able to visualize, in this case, a pond of standing water, which is kind of ironic because water represents emotion and history. And it's also something, if you can get to it, look into it and see your own reflection, in essence, how you work. Okay. I'm sure you've heard the armor of God, right? About the armor of God, the helmet, the spear, the shield, all this sort of things. It's all symbolism for understanding yourself. And you attain the armor when you can learn to control your subconscious emotion. Have you ever meditated?
Yeah, try it.
Yeah.
I haven't had lucid dreams.
Yeah, lucid dreams are the dream world. So I'll
Is it?
continue with my story. I'll continue with my story. I watched a documentary that took place here in the States, and I believe it was in South Carolina, in a prison, the most violent prison that they had in that state. And that's in the South. There's a lot of racism. There's a lot of, things that goes on in the South. But they had a new state, let's say, corrections person that took over the prison system, and he wanted to introduce Buddhism. And mind you, when I say Buddhism, uh, it's called by a lot of different names, but Buddhism is how it was introduced into this prison. And um, at first they were against it. You're not going to bring in some Middle Eastern, religion into this, Bible belt of the country and so forth. So he had to explain that it wasn't a religion. It was a practice. It was an understanding. You know, and 20 prisoners started out. 18 of them finished. And at the end of this training that they got, which was all about meditation for 2 weeks straight, um, they were all changed, every last one of them. And that intrigued me. Okay, so I could see the change in them. It was profound, and so it made me interested in it. And so that's what led me into looking into Buddhism. Like you say, it's a journey. Everybody, you learn as you go, and so I followed the Buddhism, and it didn't it didn't resonate with me because it's in a language and in terms that I don't understand. So it was repulsive to me. So there's an example of me having a thought and having a memory and emotions and feelings coming up that are getting in the way from me actually learning something. Okay. So, but I continued because I'm kind of stubborn like that. Okay. And I watched a bunch of different topics on the same matter. And I came across a basic story, which was told kind of like in an animated way, but narrated with some highly trained scholars on the subject matter. And they explained every little detail. So, my mind and the way I work and the way I've been conditioned as a cop, I began to break it down into its simplest form because it's like an accident to me. I go to a scene of an accident where I have 5 or 6 cars and physical evidence and all sorts of things around that I have to document, take pictures of, take measurements of, draw diagrams that are exactly precise, and then figure out every aspect of this accident to break it down into its simplest form so I can go and say exactly what happened step by step. Okay. My mind's been conditioned to think that way. Conditioning is a big word. Um, and so when I broke it down, it broke down into like about 12 sayings that went along with the story, and each saying had a little understanding of life and how it affects you and how you should look at it. And it came with simple rules of like communication, how you should interact with other people, how you should meet anger with calm being one of them, and to listen or be patient, things of that nature. These are good rules that we all should be taught, and I guess our parents try to do a good job with it. But what sticks sticks, what doesn't. We become the human beings that we are. And but to further it, I took that list and I began meditating. And I understood that I had to get to this third eye thing, to get to a really calm state. And I did it. And as I did it, I examined myself, every little thing. And here's the funny thing, because this is where this story branches off into more symbolism. I don't know what the courts are like in your country. I have no idea. I know what they're like in my country. We have a judge, and we have a prosecutor, and we have a jury, uh, and we have a court recorder. And the court recorder is the history of whatever it is they're going to bring the charges against you. Okay. And you have the prosecutor who's going to prosecute you. And you have a judge who oversees it. And you have a jury that's going to decide whether you were right or wrong according to the law. That same system is the system that you take into meditation with you. Okay. Because in reality, the only person that can actually judge you is yourself. You're the only one who knows the truth of anything. And hence that's the spear that you have to take in the meditation, right? You can't lie to yourself if you're going to judge yourself. This is about chasing your evil spirits out, your evil thoughts, your evil, emotions, trying to understand why you did what you did to somebody else. You're going to judge yourself. And a lot of people can't do that. A lot of people can't look at themselves, okay? Because emotion gets in the way. They put their hands up and they don't want to deal with it. Okay, but I went through with it because I did some things in my life at the end that hurt my family, hurt my wife, hurt myself, and I had to judge myself. And I found that when I did this work in this deep meditation, just like that was described, to look at myself, to understand how my thoughts caused me to have this emotion, maybe because of memories, etc. Okay, and judge every aspect about it. And then I didn't stop with the person I hurt. I had to also realize who else I hurt. Right? It's a training. Keep in mind, it's a training. And I realized I hurt my kids. Well, I had to visualize everything that I did to them. By the time you're done, you leave no stone unturned. You look at all the pain you caused to everyone around you, and plus yourself. Then you had to ask yourself, you know, how could I have done this without hurting people? What should I have done? And then those things came in, like I should have listened. I should have been more patient. I should have met my anger with calm. These rules, right? And I'd come out of this deep meditation for about, maybe an hour, 2 hours, as long as I could keep it in that calm sense. Because when you're in that calm place, okay, um, you have no emotions like you would if you were consciously, you're in a room and all of a sudden somebody that you really have a beef with walks in. You know how that feeling comes over you, okay, that anger or whatever it is. And you go to work mentally trying to keep it down. So it's a lot of work. A lot of people don't want to deal with their emotions, but this is a place that you can deal with your emotions, and you do it in a calm state to allow your mind to understand what's happening with your body, how these emotions are coming, right? Sometimes I would stand up and I would be disgusted with myself. Wow, I own that. I did those things. I can't deny that. Other times I would stand up and I would look at what I should have done, and I should have listened, I should have been more calm, etc. These rules, and it started sounding like stories out of the Bible, right? Okay, but I kept doing it, and the more I did it, the faster the thought process of understanding right from wrong based on emotions and how to act and so forth, the easier it became. But each time it took me, a good 30 minutes to get to this state of calm. How to do it, the third eye is a very important part. It's how to clear the mind when you're meditating. Okay, I know this sounds boring probably to you, but the point is, after about 2 weeks of doing this seriously, like a training, there came a time where I stood up from meditation, and I knew immediately upon standing up that something was different. Okay, and I froze halfway up, and I realized something was different. And what had happened was the calm that I had practiced in meditation, okay, um, that usually takes me 30, 40 minutes to get to, actually stood up with me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay.
You established,
And
right? Permanent
say again.
establishment. Permanently
Correct.
established.
I realized because of, I understand training, I understand why we train, etc. I understand I understood a lot about the subconscious, but I never really put it all together that I could train the subconscious portion of me. Okay. And when I stood up, I realized immediately what I had done was I had just conditioned my body to be calm. Okay. And it was shocking to me. Okay. I literally stood up and I was shaking my arms thinking, what happened? Did my body fall asleep on me here or what? It was just so strange, right? And then I realized, what had taken place. So I encountered my wife at the time about this, and I tried to explain to her what had just happened, and she was all ears, until I told her about the part about judging yourself. At that point, she blew up. She became very emotional and started screaming at me. And when she did, she was screaming, and it caused the thoughts and memories of her screaming so many times before, right, that it triggered that response where the emotion tried to, let's say, make its circle, make its ring, but then it stopped about waist high, like it hit a glass ceiling, okay, boom. And I realized that she no longer had this ability to push buttons on me. Do you understand? She knew exactly after 30 years of being married which button to push, okay? And for the first time, it had no effect. And I felt like I was in just a bubble of calm, okay? So I understood what it meant to have the shield. You understand? The shield.
Yeah. I've experienced it
Okay,
when I was 27. What are you trying to explain? It's when the first time when I heard about all this stuff. We call it transurfing of reality. It's exactly what you're trying to explain right now. It's a meditation,
okay.
talking to yourself, judging to yourself. But in Russia, we have like the meaning of conscious is a little bit different than it's in English, because um, in English it's like, are you conscious is like it has to be like guilty conscience and stuff like this. So it's like something with
Well,
guilt. But in Russia,
no,
conscience
no,
is
no, no,
like
no, no, no.
common
That
common sense. Like it's like noosphere, that is like everybody knows and feels, but cannot explain. Okay.
Yeah, there's common sense, but consciousness. People are aware in America that consciousness is the here and now. What you
Yeah.
see around us,
It's when you
the
like
conscious world.
they are you conscious? Yeah. He is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you wake up.
But
Yeah, yeah.
conscience in Russia has a larger meaning. Not only this meaning, like guilty conscience or being conscious. It's like conscious. It's like common knowledge that everybody has, but cannot explain. It's like something that is what you say subconscious, or maybe something like it's connected to the internet of global thoughts of everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And this
Yeah.
is where you get lucid dreaming, because when I started to find out how do you hook up to that
Mm-hmm.
subconscious channel to a common conscious, it's called the Navi world. So that's why when I found out about the Navi world, and this Navi world has different layers, and the lower layers are like dark layers, so-called dark layers. They like connected to something like hell, and the upper layers are connected to something like heaven. Something
Mm-hmm.
like that as heaven and
The
hell. Okay.
the three realms of being: heaven, earth, and hell. Okay,
Yeah, but
and
we have a
and
fourth one, which is like it's called Slav. It's like when you make your own heaven or hell, but
mm-hmm.
it's also connected to the common one. But you can get all the souls and all the minds into your own world, and this is where the religions comes over, because all the religions are those parallel worlds, because they are not connected to either one of three that you mentioned. It's like somebody's own, and he like made it up and made everybody believe in it, and he like makes all
Mm-hmm.
those signs, symbolism, so people can recognize him after their death and join him into their trip to nowhere.
Correct. Yeah, we have Jim Jones. We have a history of that in our country. How that's in history all over the place. But to me, you have to understand this. Okay, if you break down almost any religion, uh, it's in Buddhism. It's in the story of Christ. Constantine, when the Bible was put together, left out the gospel according to Thomas. And are you familiar with that? What that is? The gospel according to Thomas? It's a
Probably not.
list. Okay, it's a list of 114 things that he was known to have said. It's not like any other gospel that you will read that tells the story of Jesus Christ and all his deeds. No, this is a list. Okay, and I looked at it and I realized what I was looking at because it is a list that I took into meditation from the Buddhism story. And when I understood and I read, some of the history why they left it out, it was too confusing to Christians because it would say if your father doesn't believe or your parents don't believe like you, then you should leave them. It was filled with positive and negative things. But in the end, part of the Buddhist story is that this information should only be used for good. Okay, and because in the end, when you realize what we're talking about is also psychology, how the subconscious works, it is also used as a tool by powerful people to control us. Okay,
Yeah.
if you are not taught how your subconscious works, and you are not told that you can train your subconscious reaction to be calm, that doesn't mean you don't feel what's coming up. It just means that your body, your temple, your beast is calm as it comes up. And for some reason, it stops about waist high. Now, why I keep saying that, repeated a couple times, is because how it correlates in history is Paul's thorn in his side, the Bible story. The wound is just a thorn. It's no longer a spear wound, it's just a little thorn. In other words, when you learn to control this and you stand up, as I did, it changes everything in an instant. Okay. Because when you're meditating, and you're using your mind, you can call that heaven because the mind is a very powerful thing. It is. It can imagine anything. It's godlike. It can do almost anything in the mind, right? But God's kind of a funny character because he took this beautiful mind and he chose to stick it on one of the most emotional creatures on the planet called a human being. And then he turned around and forgot to give us the instruction manual on how to deal with all these emotions. And this is all I'm suggesting is the instruction manual. It's the same understanding that is talked about in, the Emerald Tablets with Thoth, the Sumerians, you know, uh, the lion, what it represents, the pyramids. The pyramid has four sides representing thought, memory, feelings, and emotion. Four sides also have another, most people don't know it, but it actually has eight sides. We're talking the Great Pyramid. When you look down on it, they know that in the center of each side, there's a slight divot in it, that it actually has two sides to each one of them. You can look at that as the positive and negative. It's the same thing as the yin and yang. Okay. If you take a look at yin and yang, it's a black and white teardrop and a white and black teardrop. And that represents the four in the circle, a lot about symbolism, and then the eight markings that go all the way around it. Eight. Okay. Standing for the positive and negative in each one of these four sides. Okay. So once I understood the story of what this is, it's a training, and they're describing how to do this training. And it's based on, it does so much. This training does so much in terms of allowing your mind to understand what's happening to you and understanding the full process.
Yeah.
But once the training is instilled and that calm stands up with you, then you truly start understanding things like what it means to be reborn, because you are actually a different person. Thought. You have to kill the old person first. The old you have to understand that you have the ability to be this different person. And when this happened to me and I stood up, I knew what it meant to be whole, because for the first time I wasn't just in control of myself consciously. My body was assisting me subconsciously. How that plays a part: one time I wasn't having a lucid dream, I was having a nightmare. Okay. and and in this nightmare I found myself in a dark place, and things happened in the dream. And it was real, one of these real dreams. I found that the more I meditated, also the more easily it was for me to bring up images in my head that were more powerful in terms. But anyways, it was an extremely kind of violent dream filled with symbolism and stuff. But when I woke up out of the dream, I realized that, wow, I was calm in my dream. You understand it? Yeah, have you ever had nightmares where you woke up and your chest is thumping and things of that nature?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
called post.
I'm
That's
experienced
that.
since 25 years old, as I've told you.
Yeah, yeah. And you take heed. You listen to your dreams, especially when they're like this. But to find out that when your body is trained subconsciously to remain calm in the face of any thought, which is consciousness, or any memory, which is the past, that can spark up, the emotions that make it seem like it's happening all over again today. When you can train this beast to be calm, then emotion no longer has the grip on you that it once did. It's Thor's belt, Thor's belt. So because I understand this basic story, when I see different things in terms of symbolism or in terms of building structures, the colonial style buildings with the pyramid built into them, or statues, or the armor of God being paraded around. I listen to Martin Leakey's channel as well. And he's big into the Venetians and the Tartarians. But I see the same symbolism being used. And he recently had something on here because for some reason hates or dislikes the Phoenicians. But it's also where somewhere along the line that this knowledge was lost. They stopped teaching it to people. The mud flood. You opened my eyes up with God, it's been a while. So it's probably been, I don't know, a year ago that I started listening to you. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you go to Lebanon at Baalbek with a drone? Was that you?
No.
No, there was another. Okay, I also listened to Earthworks. There was another person that took a drone to Lebanon, and I knew about the big stones in Baalbek, the little guy standing next to it, two of the largest stones ever moved. But I never knew what was on top of it until they took that drone up there and showed me a whole colonial style thing. And then the guy took us out into the desert, and you saw cities that were buried like this. We have that infrastructure all across the United States. But we're finding things from the Phoenicians that nobody in history over here is talking about, but you can find it when you go Googling it. You know, there's all kinds of lost history, you know. And in my mind, in order to build a worldwide civilization like the Tartarians did, you would think they would have to know how to get along, how to control themselves. Um, this knowledge can be used for either good or evil, you know. If people know how to control themselves, they won't be so quick to anger. People get along a lot better. This is the same information, that it's hidden, in the symbolism, like I said, the pyramid with the all-seeing eye, and the fact that skull and bones are, Masons take it as if it's theirs. So in people's eyes, those guys are evil bastards. We don't want nothing to do with them. So you don't understand the symbolism. They distort it. They change it. They don't want you to know that you have more control over yourself than you do, because it's your subconscious that they prey upon via commercials, to incite you to war, fascism. Stir those emotions. And people who don't know how to control their emotions are moved. I used to be, hell, I can remember a president standing up, or Colin Powell with a vial standing in front of the United Nations, knowing that vial, contained gas, but they also knew it only had a shelf life of 6 months. But they're telling you, we better go after them, or, or We better go after Saddam before he's got before he comes after us in the form of a nuclear cloud. Ooh, man, stirring the emotions. Okay. And right now, even in our country, on Facebook, the arguments, everything that's going on, even with age-old friends of mine, even my ex-wife, she's a Democrat, I'm a Republican now. I'm against globalism. I'm against globalism because I believe these bankers are evil bastards. Okay. I believe that the Rothschilds, who are Jewish, understand what that Star of David is. Okay. You're looking at a pyramid with an inverted pyramid right over the top of it. So they understand the temple. They understand how you work. They understand everything about it, not just in a vague way. Oh, yeah, I understand that. Oh, I get that. I used to be the same way. Remember, I was a guy who said you couldn't tell me anything about emotion. But after this experience, I realized I didn't know jack shit about emotion, really know anything about it, until I discovered this this teaching, this message. Okay. Odin, Odin said it best. Let's all agree we're talking about the same thing, but we're saying it in different ways. Because you can symbolize it or describe how we work in all kinds of ways. But it all breaks down back into these four things and how they cause this reaction within you. Okay, and that's how we live our lives. We go through lives. We have so many good times we can't remember them all. But you remember the bad times. You remember it instantly. And this is how we work. And we live this way our whole entire life. And we think we're in control. I mean, who am I to tell you how you work? Or vice versa, right? But when you understand this is the way we work, there's no arguing over this point anymore. The only thing that will be argued over, like you still see it in this country a lot, you can call it new age stuff or whatever, where people try to describe this as if it were theirs. I discovered this, and etc. And what is it? Dianetics is one. There's all kinds of popular programs that try to train you in the same thing I'm talking about, like you probably experienced, right?
This is called the
And how many people?
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah. How
Have
many
you heard
people
about
actually? Yeah. Yeah.
cognitive dissonance? Have you heard about it?
It's been around for a long time, actually. They used to sell tapes for you to go to sleep listening to.
No, I mean
They sell it to you.
this. There's a meaning so-called cognitive dissonance. Have you heard about it?
Dissonance. Well, go ahead and tell
Cognitive.
me.
It's when
I've
you
heard about it, but refresh.
like experience something new that is not based on anything that you knew before, and
Okay.
you understand that everything you known before is not working anymore.
Correct.
So after
Correct.
this knowledge that you had, you like totally like frustrated, you don't know what to do, and you like try to be based on something, but you don't have any ground anymore. You're not based on anything, and then you start all over again. So I experienced all this stuff. It's like, and I see you had this cognitive dissonance in your life. This is when,
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
it 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 it, it definitely changes you. It has a profound change. In fact, in the Gospel of Thomas, they will ask, because you'll see, it talks about teachers to pray and all this stuff, okay? But when you understand every story, be it when he first starts out in the list, is either positive or negative, in the end, it can only be used for good. Okay. So no matter, because we're talking Jesus, we're talking God, right? It's only supposed to be used for good. Okay. And when you get down to a certain portion, they'll, his disciples asked him, what's it like when you first enter heaven? And you're going to see a description such as, at first, you're stunned. You're stunned. And then you're amazed. Okay. And that's exactly the sequence that I went through when I stood up from meditation, and that calm followed me. I mean, I can't really describe the power of that moment except to to say it opened my eyes to all these different stories that were trying to tell me this, because I had no idea what was going to happen to me until I stood up. And that effect, once you realize what takes place, then it amazes you. Okay, because you just didn't know before. You didn't know you had this ability before. Okay, and when you realize that it doesn't, this isn't going to change your path in life, but it will certainly change how you go through that path in life, to make better decisions as you're going through it, and not to get hurt so easily by others' words, because when I run across people now that try to push my buttons, I understand exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it, but it doesn't have the effect, the desired effect that they wished it, would have on me anymore. And so, that to me is the armor of God. The same story is told in South America, when supposedly, I don't believe our history anymore after what, I've seen, lately, maps of, the Americas from the 1600s, 1700s, that it's like filled with cities, where all these cities come from. And you open my eyes. Salt Lake City, I don't know if you've ever researched that one, but supposedly, they built this city, in 50 years, and you look at it and it's like there's no way that this city was built by this few of people in this little amount of time. It was already existing, and it's just crazy, the history that's coming out now. But this is a big part of it, I believe, that is being hidden from us right in front of our eyes in terms of symbolism. They confuse it with all this different information, so you have so much information out there to choose from. How do you know which one is right? Okay. And all I'm suggesting is that when you look at this kind of stuff, and understand the symbolism in it, okay, that's one thing, and there's so many topics we can talk about, but it'll all come back to one thing. That is how we, as an individual, are going to uh, receive it, how we're going to react to it. Um, and that measure of self-control, all I'm suggesting is should be put out there in the open, in the most simplistic way, not to be sold. Are you familiar with Greg Braden, Gia?
No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Gia. There's some popular people in this country that run a show that from that covers all kinds of different topics. Okay, but they talk about this new age stuff and how to change yourself. This kind of same things that I was talking to you about. But how many people achieve it? How many people actually achieve it? Because if it's not taught, if you're not told exactly how to do it, and you're trying to sell it. In other words, you could have the answer, Philip, in what we're trying to say, but there's somebody over here with a bigger network, okay, with a lot more followers that's going to drown you out with something that you're also saying, but he's going to take the credit for it, and he's actually wrong in what he's saying, and you know it. So, but hey, his program, his way of putting it across is better than yours. So, he wins, right? I mean,
Yep.
that's the way it is. But so what I try to get across to people in its simplest form is that this one basic understanding of how thought, memory, feelings, and emotion work, both positive and negative, is the symbolism in a lot of stories. The subconscious being the serpent, the beast, the lion, the dogs. I see it everywhere. The temples in South America, you have the pyramids, but you also have the serpents. The colonials, when they first came over here, the Spaniards, they were appalled that they worshipped the snake. Okay, and there are three realms. You had the condor of heaven, you had the puma being the earth, and you had the serpent, and they honored the serpent. And us in the Garden of Eden, that's an evil thing, but it's understanding where evil comes from. It comes from man's inability to control himself, right? To bring harm to others, to close off and just be that policeman, and not have any emotion. Hopefully, policemen don't go out and kill people. But I believe psychopaths have that same problem. That's why they can kill people so easily without even thinking about it. Especially if you were raised that way as a kid. I mean, we can go on and on. I've read things like monks who are indoctrinated from like age 6 and 7 years of age. They take all the way until they get into their 70s and 80s before they can achieve nirvana. And I had to ask myself, well, why is that? I didn't spend my life in a monastery before. I believe this is grace. I believe this is nirvana, what I tried to describe to you, because of what it does. Okay, I mean, it literally, because of this calm, any memory that now comes up has to interact with the calm before I have to deal with it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
It changes the past immediately, and it changes who you are now, because the past doesn't affect you the same way, and neither can anybody around you. So it also affects the future, how you go forward. Okay, and I just believe this simple teaching needs to be brought out into the open, that people have this capability. But there's a catch to it, like the monk. They're trained so well how to be polite. They're trained, in all this information of what this does to a person. Okay, it's the effects that they're trying to describe. That's the same thing as the Bible. The Bible tries to describe the effects that this does, how you should think and why you should think this way. But the true answer is how to instill that in somebody, how to condition somebody, and it's used in a lot of ways. We condition people right and left. We condition soldiers, we condition students, we condition people. But we have the ability to condition ourselves in order to live the best life we can in terms of good and bad. Why good and bad happens by understanding where it comes within you. I mean, how can you understand somebody else if you don't even understand yourself? You know what I mean? And we play up here on the shallow end. Oh, he said that, and that's the reason I acted this way, and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, it goes back to you not being able to control your own emotions, and your emotions getting the better of you. Okay? And when you can train that to be calm, then, and you understand the effect is probably the most powerful thing, because it doesn't go away. It just doesn't go away, and neither does the understanding of it in your mind of what's going on. It changes everything. And you can say, yeah, it takes a lot of experience to get to that. And it does, because the monk who lives to 70 before he hits this nirvana, the question then becomes, how do you get relief from a good life? If you're having a good life, how do you get relief, right? Think about it. Okay. On the other hand, somebody who's dealing with a lot of pain, okay, a lot of emotional stuff, when this calm hits them, they are going to feel relief. Do you understand? It cuts that pain in half. It makes it tolerable so you can deal with it. This is a powerful thing, and it's talked about, like I said, in all kinds of walks of life, but people aren't breaking it down to its simplest form. They're too busy trying to understand all the peripherals, everything around it. The story of Odin. You know who Odin is, right? The Norse god.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You look at his description. He's said to have only one eye, because he had to give the other one up in order to gain this great knowledge. When I heard one eye, I thought, that's interesting. That's kind of like the third eye thing, right? Knowledge, third eye. And he's got two ravens. And I thought, And I started reading their names in the Nordic language. And then you get to the English translation. Do you know what his ravens' names were in English?
I'm not sure if I remember them. But Odin in Russian means one. So
one.
Thor is two. So his son Thor was two. So to Thor something is do it again.
Yeah. Odin had two birds, and the birds were named Thought and Memory. And then he has his hounds. and they're named after every kind of emotional creature you can name. But then he had an 8-legged horse, and I thought that was strange, right? Until I saw a kid's drawing. They showed ancient drawings of kids' drawings, and one was a big circle with 8 legs underneath it. You know how kids draw legs that more like they look like more like pyramids? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, like 2 sticks, if you will. But they had 2 sticks or 8 legs representing the legs of Odin's horse, and it looked like the 4 sides of the pyramid. Does that make sense to you? Like a
I'm
little
not
kid
sure
drawing
if
a.
we read the same stuff about Odin, because in our
Well,
right, it doesn't have any horse. He had like one claw, and he's had one eye because his other eye was given to Navi world, so he can be at both worlds at the same time, and that's actually
correct.
symbolized
And
in Skull and Bones. And he had his
it's
killed brother with him every time, so he was killed. He killed his brother, and he put his brother
mhm,
something on him so he can be like in his skin, something like this.
mhm. And but it's still the symbolism. The symbolism of those 4 things are still there. I mean, and he doesn't have a horse. You can Google that. His Odin's 8-legged horse. And I just found that fascinating that the symbolism looked like, when, it looked like 4 sides of the pyramid. It's the way kids draw, like an upside down peace sign. It looked like that. But when you put them side by side, 8 legs, it looks like the 4 sides of the pyramid with a circle over it. And what are the odds of his birds being named Thought and Memory? And what are the odds of him only having one eye? It's all interesting stuff to me, and I don't know what to believe about the verbal history of anything anymore. I really don't. These last 2 years have made me question everything about history and what we've been told is our history. I have no clue. I mean, I can't trust anything anymore. Think about it. You know, we have found giants in America, but it's not in our history books. Half the stuff that you see on the internet, and people back it up with what they're showing, the evidence. You do a splendid job with that, showing, the mud flood evidence. And you've gotten people over here. There are other people that have mud flood channels that are popping up now, and they all give you credit. And they're showing it in Canada, they're showing it in the States, and it's an amazing subject when you get into it. And then when Martin Leakey and the his channel, and the stuff that they talk about, it's just mind blowing to me. But no matter what we talk about, it all comes back to how we're going to perceive it as a person. And to me, the most important thing is no matter what happens, as we go through life, I think people should be aware and armed with the fact that they can control their emotions by training them. That's all I'm saying. And it seems like a simple thing to say, but the training itself takes a little practice and understanding of what you're doing. But the effect of it is probably the most important thing. Not so much to somebody who's having a good life, but somebody who may need this information. People that are living life in a way where they're struggling with their emotions and their thoughts and their memories, okay? How it affects them. And you see that all over the world. I mean, I'm sure you have it in Russia. It surprised me the last time I went to Europe, the things that I saw, today compared to even just 15, 20 years ago. To me, it's such a change in Europe. And I think when you take a look at religion, the Muslim situation, you know, it's supposed to be the same teaching as Jesus, so this has to be the same teaching. And when you take a look at what they believe, what the power of the sword is. You know the story of King Arthur pulling the sword out of the stone. In history, the stone represents knowledge. Let these stones serve you well. The 10 Commandments, the tablets, they're all written on stone. So stone represents knowledge. He's pulling the understanding of how to use what I'm talking about in my mind, of how to control your emotions, to be a good person. He's pulling that knowledge from the stone, because that's what we were supposed to look for our leaders. It's written too that we were supposed to look for leaders who understood this knowledge, because you want a leader that thinks about the good of everyone instead of just themselves, like we're experienced today in this country. People, our leaders are only worried about their own interest and making money. I don't know about in your country. It's a little different, I'm sure, but it amazes me, what I don't know.
Yeah, I know each and every answer of the questions you put up today. So it's like the answers are all clear to me. So I mean, there is no question on
Mm-hmm.
anything you said. So it's like either King
Mm-hmm.
Arthur pulled a sword from the stone is the rock that I'm told you before. It's the lessons that he had, the information from the Navi world that came to him who he is. So he picked his life
Mm-hmm.
finally
Mm-hmm.
because he was like a
Mm-hmm.
stranger before he came to Britain with his fellow friends. So I mean, he was not a British person, you know. He was a
No.
Sarmatian person, was from
Yeah.
Europe. And
I don't know the history. I know that you're quite worldly about a lot of the stories, but
yeah, so it's like, you know, just the relatives from Europe came to Britain and you know started to their own lives again with the new knowledge who they are. And it's like you and me. We were like kshatriyas. We were warriors, and right now we step to the level of brahmas, or those
mm-hmm.
who learn themselves in
Mm-hmm.
this world. So it's
Mm-hmm.
and the knowledge that we get is because we're ready for it. You know, we experience this information, cognitive dissonance. You experienced it in history. You experienced it in many other probably areas because you're a lot older than me. So, I mean, you had more
it, it,
experience. So, and I think this is what you get after all. You get all the information and it totally crashed down. You don't have any ground and you have to, you know, hang on to something. And you got this meditation. And this is really good because as soon as you get something, all your life makes another sense.
you know, it's well, I look at it, it's not that I have this information. It's that I did something with this information.
It's
Okay. One of
experience.
the
It's not
things,
only
well,
information. It's experience. It's
well,
personal experience.
you're absolutely true, because I believe the effect is equal to the experience.
Yeah.
It goes back to, if you've never had anything bad happen to you, how do you get relief? You can't, because you've had a great life. Versus somebody who's been beat up, and all of a sudden they get relief. They're going to feel immediate relief, and so the experience for them will be greater than the experience for the monk, if you will, because what we're talking about is emotion. Because in life, it's not the thought that kills you, it's the emotion that comes with it. Okay. And I don't know if you've had any, and it surprised me. I asked my brother-in-law this question, one time, and I said, haven't you had any really bad experiences that you've had to, deal with in your life? Haven't you ever had any death and blah 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 blah? And he stopped and he looked at me and he said, "No, I've never really seen any trauma in my life yet." And that kind of shocked me, because you're talking to a guy who used to go to like 3, 4 different accidents a day. I saw trauma just in my whole life. So it was kind of shocking to me. So I understand that there are people that don't have a need for this. They may not have a need for it now, but they may have a need for it later. But more importantly, is just to make people aware of the fact that this training, this understanding is there. Because one of the things that really irritated me, same time, the same day when I stood up and this effect hit me, I had so many thoughts run through my head, as you could imagine one might. And one of them was, to my own church, in a sense, was, are you kidding me? You mean you could have taught me this, meaning how to pray, in order to achieve this conditioning. Instead, you taught me with this Bible, and never really explained to me how to control myself. But every time I got it wrong, you were willing to take that Bible and hit me over the head with it. I guess that's a form of conditioning too, but I would think that would be a conscious one rather than a subconscious one. And so I just want to put that out there. And I know you've had your experiences, but and I know it's a hard thing for me to explain to people. Um, and I know it's talked about in history, how many people truly understand this, 1 in 10,000 or 1 in 1,000, two in 10. It's my goal is just to put it out there to make people aware that this exists. And if they don't know how to control their subconscious and somebody else does, they're going to use it against you. That's a fact. If they can, they will. And sometimes the people who are doing it don't even know they're doing it. They're narcissistic in nature. Women are more emotional than men. Would you agree to that? I'm not saying that we don't get emotional, but in totality, they're more emotionally learned, if you will, than us. And I think they have the hardest time learning this because it's their favorite weapon to use on men. They know how to push our buttons, if you will, emotionally. I think most men could benefit from this because, we're the ones that go out into the world and have to deal with things. You look around the world and you see all the smut and crap that's being put out by our politicians. How many of them are controlled by, by other people? Blackmail, all kinds of things. And it all leads back to people not being able to control their own emotions that gets them in trouble in the first place. So it's good to know how to control your emotions just so that your emotions don't control you. That's all I'm trying to tell people. And it does so much more. But it's written all over history and it's not explained anywhere. It's not given to us in a class. It's not explained. The connections aren't, drawn out. When I went through this experience, I put it in a notebook, and I got a notebook filled with all these sayings, these things that I see across the whole network of history that you can find. And you'll see the similarities, and it all goes back to the underworld, subconscious. It goes to heaven, what you think heaven is. Is there a God? A lot of people don't believe in God. I don't know if you believe in God. I like to call myself a Buddha, not a Buddhist, because I didn't learn this from picking up a book on Buddhism or going to a Buddhism class. But like you say, it's a collection of experiences that I had that I started seeing this correlation. And then when I actually practiced it, uh, meditative training, and as I was doing it, I didn't even realize what was about to happen to me. And like I said, it was just so powerful that it answered so many questions. And I just want to share that with people. It's not about the messenger, it's about the message. Some people need it. Some people think they don't need it. You know, a young man of 30 years of age that still has a lot going for him and is still going strong and viral in life and everything is going good right now isn't going to think he needs it. But as he progresses through life, if mistakes happen and things change, he might find himself in a different situation, and he may have caused those in situations just by how he reacted. You know, it's why good people sometimes end up doing bad things and going to jail. It's crazy. You can be in any given situation, and just depending on how powerful that emotion is, that spirit, whatever you want to call it, however you want to describe it, um, um, comes up, your ability to deal with it is what's going to matter. Have you ever snapped at people? Have you ever just done things that you've regretted afterwards? And those are the types of things that get people in trouble and can change your whole life in an instant. And that's why it's important for people just to understand this information. So that's where I'm at. And I just see it everywhere I look. As I said, said, it's. I know there are deeper parts to every story. It's like this same story is in the Christian Bible, but you just don't see it. They talk about prayer, but they really don't explain it, what it really does. Okay. So they put it out in front of you without really giving you the full story. Sort of like our history and the mud flood. I mean, you can correlate it. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, it was very interesting to experience what you, because what you're trying to say, because I was a police officer, so
You
probably,
did not know that.
yeah, you didn't know.
No, did not know that.
I was investigating corruption and
Yeah,
economic crimes, all this
yeah.
stuff. So it's like,
Well, yeah, mine was a little bit more emotional, a little bit more blood and guts, and traffic accidents are horrible things to see. But I'll get a lot of fun of watching. There's a lot of Russian channels out there with your guys' traffic and cameras in your cars now. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
pretty fun to watch. Different countries. Yeah.
So I
Well,
mean,
anyways,
I have
I
an
mean,
operational mind. So I like, I was working with agents. I was working with, rats, whatever you call them. So it's like in different companies,
yeah,
but
informants.
informants, yeah.
Yep, yep,
So I'm like
yep.
very familiar with the investigations and stuff like this. So, and I was
Well,
pretty young to become a captain. I was a captain at 25 maybe. So you have to
yeah,
understand it's very fast career, but it
yeah.
burned me off when I like reached that level, when I started to get in touch with the big bosses like colonels, generals, and stuff
Uh,
like this. And it's like when you sit around those guys who are like older than you, 20 years and 15 years older than you, and you're like the only one, the youngest, everybody's gonna be picking you up. So like I didn't like being a rookie in the front of all those people. Like, although I had a bunch of experience with attorneys and stuff like these in the courts, and I was more professional and more modern and more like technological than any of those guys. But still, it was not my job. I felt it. So it's like
mhm,
as soon as I reached this level, I understood this is not my job. It's like
mhm.
totally parasitic job when you catch those people, blame them in something, like, prove it, get all this evidence, catch more people and question them. And so it's like all over again. It's like just a huge line of processes that's going towards the court, and you like follow them up. So it's like really boring, but it's interesting at
Ch-
the same time.
is it is it is corrupt in your country as it is here? Just out of curiosity. I mean, do
Well,
you feel that your system is corrupt in ways
I know
to
that
the common man?
the system I was working in, that was established in the 90s. So 90s was the time that American advisors were all over the Russia. So they
Yeah,
probably made us to implement the system that they were familiar with. So the
mhm,
system that you can, give the bribes to, and make any person corrupt, get all this information on him, and then you can pull
yeah,
the strings, so he will be like accepting whatever they're gonna be telling you.
yeah,
So this system is pretty much as you had like in 30s and 40s, right?
yeah,
When we have a deep integration of some deep state structures like mafia and stuff like this, and maybe some covered government, even maybe some orders that we don't even know about, and the system of that is totally familiar with Russian style. Russian style is like more emotional, is what you're trying to say. Give this to woman. If we like look at the map of the world, the woman is probably Russia. So each and every
mhm.
one who's living in Russia is,
Mother Russia, right?
yeah, familiar with all these emotions that you're talking about. So I know what you're talking about in case of men and women, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I like we like more emotional in comparison to like any Western country. But we're like not as emotional as like, I don't know,
Other countries.
yeah, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe like India or, China, where people are totally emotional in their like lifestyle, in their like monks and stuff like this, in Tibet. And what you're trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is that we know that caste system was developed in our world, and we're like familiar with it. So if you're like in the caste of the simple people who just want to wake up, eat some food, go to the go some do something, like, make some money, return home, go to sleep,
Mhm.
and so on and so forth, then you like on the first step. If you think about like managing all this stuff, like trying to uh, make a community or make an organization or commercial company, or maybe you're a manager of some system, like a, I don't know, educational system, maybe college, maybe you're a professor, maybe you're investigator, or maybe you're like a specialist in some area, like you can give an expertise in the court. You also this, person. This is like the second type of person. So the third one is the person that can kill, and those are the
Mhm.
warriors. So this is the difference, because they're pretty much the same as the second one, but in comparison to the second one, they kill. So they kill and have no regret about it, because they feel it. It's like it's in their blood, and they can
But
kill a person
they.
physically and kill him professionally, like psychologically, totally erase
Mhm.
him. And so this is the same. So killing psychologically and killing physically is the same. So I was the third class person, and probably you were so. And the fourth one is a so-called brahmas, or we call it veduns, Vedic persons, that only research themselves, and
Mhm.
they know all those three steps. They probably passed it in their lives already, and they're
Mhm.
like kind of bored and all this experience, because they already know all this stuff. And as
Mhm.
young as they find out that they are like not in any of those classes, they don't belong, and they go to the fourth one, is the rise of their soul, and they're starting to develop towards their goal, actual goal that they feel to be comfortable with. So it's like,
Mhm.
and I like stepped on this in around like 30 years old, and I like, I didn't like it a lot, because as soon as I started to give the people information, like what you were trying to say to me today, nobody was listening. It's like very
Yeah.
hard to
They don't.
explain. Even my
It's
wife doesn't
it's
understand.
it's extremely difficult to talk to people about the subject matter of emotions and how they work, because it's the very subject matter that triggers the response, the emotional response. The moment I talk, like for instance, I've talked to, I've talked to people that I've never talked to before. They don't know me, I don't know them, and I bring this subject matter up. People then seem to be most receptive, because we don't live in the same village. I can be a doctor here. Okay? I can't be a doctor in my own village, just like I can't explain to somebody like my wife this information, because there's too much history between us. Okay, and her head has too many memories that are going to bring. All I have to do, and this is true in anybody's case. I mean, you've probably experienced this yourself, because I know I have, and that is, you can just merely run across somebody that looks like somebody you don't like. Do you understand me? You know it's not the person, but this person reminds you so much of somebody that you don't like, that you immediately don't really want to even talk to them, just because of the way they look. Did you follow that? I mean, it's just a response in us that that mm, that most people don't understand. They just react to it and they go on in their lives, and that's great. I mean, I have no problem with that. I don't. I think what upsets me the most is that what I'm talking about, they know about. I believe they truly know this, and they truly use it for evil. They do not teach us this. They don't even want you to know it exists on the level that I'm trying to explain it. That at one time, this was really, I mean, they built pyramids to explain this. Okay, the Sphinx. Think about the Sphinx. You have the head of a man, okay, representing thought and memory, on the body of a lion, which represents your feelings and emotion, the beast in you. Okay, like I said, what is it? It's the Star of David, but it's the Lion of Judah. You know, if you go look at some of the symbolism there, you have that pyramid, which represents the temple, like I told you, the story of Solomon, okay? And you have that inverted pyramid, which is the, you know, the subconscious. And right through the middle of it, you have a lion jumping through it, you know? To me, you know, we try to explain those things in great detail, and people get lost in the minutia of the story rather than in the true meaning of what it's trying to tell you. Do you follow that? You know,
Yes,
sometimes,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, the main reason I started to talk about those classes is you have to identify yourself as that person of that class because you can't go back no more. As for the hermit, he cannot go if he becomes like a company leader. He cannot just go back to being a hermit without any hurt. So it's like total loss of everything. Like you can, of course, you can, kill yourself or maybe, you know, go to asylum or something. I don't know, or make yourself on an uninhabited island, and I don't know, but that doesn't change anything to yourself except maybe your psychological behavior. What I'm trying to say is that as long as you step to this Brahma's level, there's a bunch of false narratives that surrounds us at this level also, as we have in
mm-hmm.
history, as we have in education, in those previous three levels. So and this is really the biggest problem because what those parasites want from us is they don't want us to act. They want us to acknowledge stuff.
Follow.
Just follow, just record, just acknowledge,
That's
just
it.
rewrite,
That's right.
redo, recheck, research. This is the word
Mm-hmm.
research. It's not the search. It's research. Like you do it again and you do it again and you
Yeah.
like have all this repeatable and all this stuff that's actually to qualify as a scientific method, right? And this is
Yeah.
what they get us stuck in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if we stuck
I,
to this stuff, we are not getting back, and we're not getting forward or back. We just stuck like in the Trump said, like swamp or something, right? So it's
uh,
like a swamp, and as long as you start moving in the swamp, you're drowning, and you figure out you should like stay
swim.
comfortable and in this knowledge that you have, and try to like float or something. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm very comfortable where I'm at because when I, let's say, crashed and burned, when my life fell apart, and with my injury and my, let's say, PTSD. Okay, um, you know, it took me to very dark places, and you talk about vodka. Well, me and vodka have a history, if you will. Okay, yes, we do. And but you know, along the way, this experience was extremely powerful, and uh, it is it compels me. Okay, it compels me to try to tell other people about it, and you know, that's planting the seed. The seed. Okay, even for people, I ran across a guy from uh, Finland, and he's a millionaire. He's in the computer business, and he was here visiting a friend, also work in the Silicon Valley. So there was an American with him, and also a South African, and they were going to go climbing the following day at Yosemite. Okay, and you know, we started drinking beers. We were in a little tavern, and he starts telling me, you know, about his life, you know, and you know what he does, and he tells me he spent 5 years in a monastery in Tibet, trying to find himself as a Buddhist monk. But he found it too rigid. He didn't like it. He didn't like it. So now he's in the Zen, and this is the reason he's climbing mountains. So of course I hit him up and I said, well, what was at the bottom of your Buddhism? I mean, what can you describe it? And he starts describing the religion, the what is it? The eight noble, or four, I think, foretold path or something like that, and the eight noble truths, and immediately started turning me off because that's just a different way of describing it. But and I said, could you just put it in simple English for me? Okay, I mean, what is it, the basis, what is it exactly that you're trying to achieve? And he couldn't do it. Okay, and that's when I hit him up with, well, this is what I got out of the story. And I told him about my experience and how it's about thought, memory, feelings, and emotion. And it struck a nerve with him because this is not a guy that he had knowledge of it. Okay, so he understood. It clicked in him for some reason. It clicked in him, and I also followed it up with the story of Odin, and because I was there, I was able to put it on paper to show him the symbolism behind a lot of this stuff, including, like, the cross. The cross represents the four things: a circle with a dot in it, a circle with a square in it. These are all symbolisms, okay, that a lot of people think a lot of different things out, but it all is representative of who we are and how we work. The swastika was another ancient symbol before the Nazis turned it around and used it for their evil deeds. And it's just, like I said, even though it is understood by few, it shouldn't be hidden by the people that are using it for evil. Okay, and if you research the Rothschilds, the first banker who did this, I mean, you think about the psychology of the games they played, from causing stock market crashes to manipulating people so they can manipulate governments. I mean, that's what they do, and the way they do it is to instill fear, to control people in various ways, all kinds of ways. I mean, now we got computers that use mass media to brainwash us all. But how many people really go through life thinking about the things that are important when you've got so much at your disposal to satisfy any kind of emotional need you have, called the internet? You can look up anything now. But in life, when you come back to reality, you still have to go through life, and a life is going to affect you. It's going to have its consequences. The older you get, the more pain you're going to experience in your life. You're going to have more memories of it. And so therefore you have more flashes when it happens to somebody else. My grandmother, who passed away, she passed away at 87. She told me before she passed away, the hardest thing about growing old, really growing old, is watching everything that you love die before you. She says there's nothing more painful in life than watching the people, family that you love die before you. Nothing more painful. And she's right. And so, it's not about the thought, it's about the emotion. In a new wave movements, it's all about the brain. The brain can do this, and as I said, the brain is a beautiful thing. It can imagine a lot of things, okay? But they seem to forget about the body, the beast, and the fact that we're no different than animals, that we can like the cats, we can be trained, we can be conditioned. You know what I mean? And we don't think that way. We don't, we think we are all special. We think that nobody is like us, yet we're like everyone else. Is that a Siamese?
Yeah, it's a
Nice.
sphinx.
Is it a hairless?
A sphinx.
Yes, yes, yes. Very nice. I have a three-legged cat. He lost a leg.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a neighbor with such cat. Well, very interesting talking to you. Maybe we can, continue next time.
Yeah.
Um,
Just
Very
keep
interesting
your
experience.
eyes open for it, and I hope you, I don't know if you will connect the dots as strong as I will, because I've experienced it. It's easy for me to talk about, but But the subconscious, anytime you see these symbolisms, know that they're all, when you break every single one of them down, from the story of Solomon to the story of Buddha to the story of Jesus, these religions, but it's older than those religions, because when you take a look at how old, some of these structures are and what they represent, it's and it's also scary if you believe the Sumerian text too. We are supposed to be a slave race. And how do you know that this thing I'm talking about, that they built symbolisms, pyramids and all this stuff, religion isn't the instruction manual, if you will. You know what I mean? And I'm just saying that it would behoove people to truly know that there is a training that can teach people how they work through right and wrong, positive or negative, through those four things: how thoughts turn into memories, and how feelings turn into emotions. Your body remembers pain. It does. All you have to do is say one word that sparks that memory, and that emotion can come up. And we should know how to control that emotion. They should put that out there. It shouldn't be sold. Hey, that way it creates that competition. And what you're doing is you're actually distorting it, because, then people are going to exaggerate what it does, and people start looking. I mentioned the guy named Greg Braden. They're talking about remote viewing and, the power of the mind and all these different, like supernatural things you can do with this knowledge.
Yeah.
Yet they don't understand how to use it in its simplest form, just in order to control your own emotional state, to balance it, to bring balance to it.
Yeah. I
But I
don't think.
appreciate talking to you.
Yeah, but I don't think you have to control something because the emotion was given us to be experiencing. So this
Well,
is the way we
you're
teach
going to
ourselves.
you you're going to experience it no matter what, no matter if you know this information or not.
Yeah,
You could still be like those early Christians and be fed to the lions. You know what I mean? It just helps you go through life being able to deal with the situations that come at you, instead of just responding, angrily at something. It gives it that hesitation at the waist when it hits the ceiling. It just allows the mind a little bit more time to make the proper decision, because you train for it. How should I do this correctly? It's
yeah.
just a good training to know. That's what I have to say. But thank you again for letting me
Yeah.
ramble on.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
All right, sir.
See
Bye
you.
bye.